Hello, Orange Army, and welcome to yet another episode of UJ Sports on UJTV. My name is Yamukhetwe, your host, committed to always delivering the most. And next to me, of course, I have my co-host, Ndando Konto. Ndando, hello.
Hi everyone. Hi Orange Army. What's going on? Today we have the president of UJ Rowing. His name is Daniel Dollar. He's going to take us through the uses that just happened recently. So yeah, Dollar, what's happening, brother?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Listen, just tired, but we're still embracing his grace on a regular basis, man. So yeah, take us through it. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you're on all about.
Yeah, so my name is Daniel Dollar. I've been rowing for 3 years, and in terms of rowing, I'm a relatively new rower.
Yep.
So the fact that I'm the president of UJ Rowing is absolutely insane. And if you had asked me last year if I thought this is where I would be, I would have told you, no, you're absolutely crazy. But having raced this past USA, and having had such an amazing performance, I mean, you were there, I can definitely say I bought into the vision.
Yeah.
UJ Rowing is currently where it's at.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just want to ask you, Mr. Daniel, can you just please take us through your journey? You know, like you said that obviously this is not where you thought you'd be last year, right? You're the president. Like, I just want you to tell us, how has that been? Like, how does it feel being the president of such like prestigious rowing club? How has your journey been thus far? Where did you start? How did you get in? And how did you work your way to this point?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when I came to UJ, I was actually looking to join the swimming team because in high school I swam. And I am just all things water.
Okay.
And then UJ was like, well, we don't have a swimming team, but we have a rowing team. Same thing, it's just water. And I joined the sport, and it was probably one of the hardest sports that I've ever done. Rowing is the type of sport where you can't only be physically fit, you have to be mentally fit. And joining the sports and learning how to row, I mean, my first 10 to 15 trainings, all I did was tip the boats and swim in the water. It was really terrible. But as I started to understand the sport and move with the sport, I learned and I progressed a lot quicker. Our coaching programs at UJ, are far above the coaching programs from other varsities. You know, teaching people how to row at UJ is done far more effectively than I've seen across the board. I am proof of that. So I started rowing, and then in my second year of rowing, I was the head of social media and marketing.
Wow.
Which was fun. I mean, I got to capture the experience of UJ rowing. It wasn't extremely intense. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities besides our Instagram pages. And it was a lot of fun. And from that, it sort of pivoted to the responsibility of becoming president. So when Coach Caesar was asking people to run for president, it wasn't something that I wanted to do because I felt like I was going to be in charge of athletes who were far better at the sport than I was. I mean, I was rowing with guys who've been rowing for 10 to 15 years. And here I am, I've been rowing for 3 years.
That is huge. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was going to be in charge of athletes, like our female athletes who went to the FISU Games last year. You know,
Wow.
like really fast people. And who am I, someone who has never represented South Africa on the rowing stage, let alone I'm not the fastest in my club. So I just didn't feel as though I was adequate enough to take on the job. But having stepped into the role this year and done it to the best of my ability thus far, I came to realize that it really just wasn't about me. I think all these concerns that I had to, you know, if I'm president, I need to be the best, I need to... it really wasn't about that. It was about creating an environment where those athletes could grow, right? It was about creating an environment where the novices and the guys coming in would feel like they're part of something.
Like you did.
And that is just something I've tried to recreate, and I think it has been successful. With a club of novices, we went from 4th place last year, where we had more experienced rowers, to 2nd place with a group of the new kids on the block. So I am satisfied.
That is very interesting. And I think you did say, you know, what you're saying right now just shows us, right, that obviously there's like so much room for growth, even if like you feel like you're such a little fish in such a big pond, but still it means there's so much room for growth in your club. And let's just like reflect on the USAs, right, the recent ones that just happened. And coming from 5th place last year, and you guys made it to 2nd place this year, how does that feel? And what is the catalyst that led you guys to that? Like, it's just not easy, like coming from 5th place to 2nd place. It takes a lot of hard work. So how do you reflect on that? What do you think made that happen? What do you think you guys changed, or what do you think you guys worked on to actually make that happen?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in this sport that allows a team to go extremely fast is the unity.
Okay.
When you're moving in a boat, you have to move in sync with the man or the woman in front of you. And in sync to the point where when your hips rock over, it has to rock over at the same time as the person in front of you. When you drop your shoulders, it has to happen at the exact same time as the person in front of you. Right? You have to move like you're one person. And I think that translates off the water to the club. Last year we had a very competitive club. It was filled with a lot of athletes who were very experienced. But I think there was an element of unity that we were missing. The men's and the women's squads trained separately. The women did extremely well last year. The men, not as well as we would have hoped. But that whole unity, I feel like, was lost because the club was not really together. It was a whole lot of athletes trying to progress in their own fields. It was a whole lot of athletes trying to do the best they could. The women hit the nail on the head. I can't take that away from them. They were quite a close-knit group, which is why they went from 5th place to 2nd place for their performance last year. But the men struggled in that regard. And coming in this year, the biggest change we've made is we've just made the club one. So all of our training sessions are together. The men and the women are constantly together. And what that does is it forces everyone to sort of push one another, but it also creates the sense of family. And through that sense of family, we trust one another. And without trust, it is impossible to do the sport. I need to know that when I'm rowing down the Kawi in a 5K race or rowing down the dam at Musfastan, that Ntando is going to push as hard as I'm pushing. Right? That every time I place my blade in the water, he's doing the exact same thing behind me. So I think that was a major thing that changed this year, was the unity in the club. Everyone felt like they were part of something. They bought into the same vision. And we all knew that we were not as experienced or as fast as the other varsities. And for a lot of the guys in our club, this is their first year rowing. Ntando being one of them.
Wow.
And they said, you know what, I'm new to the sport. I'm going to go out there and do the best I can. And from doing that, I think that is how we were able to achieve the result we got.
And I mean, you mentioned something along the lines of novice or novices. Would you rather explain what novices mean and how they've impacted the performance of the club this year?
Yeah, so the novice division is basically an entire division created to grow the sport, right? It's guys who come in who are learning how to row. And you start at novice level and you row for about a year. And if the program is a really good program, then you progress and you start racing just as a normal rower. So the point of the novice division is to teach people how to row, right? And it would be quite unfair if at races we had novices racing against guys who were super experienced, right? So that's why there's an entire division created for novices. But where UJ differs is we don't have experienced rowers, right? So this year, a lot of our novices stepped into the role of the experienced rowers. So they were racing against guys who've been rowing for 15 to 20 years. And seeing them put their best foot forward, right, was sort of a testament to the programs that we have in developing rowing.
Yeah.
So as for the novice guys, I mean, when I started, I was one of 3 novices in 2023. The program was not relatively new, but it wasn't really being utilized to the most intense degree that it could be. This year, we have about 25 novices. Our club is held on the shoulders of those who are just starting. And I think the plus side to having novices is people who are just falling in love with the sport.
Yeah.
And with a lot of the experienced rowers, they've done it for so long that it's just like muscle memory. They go fast, but they're not as driven. And then you have a group of new guys who come in and they're falling in love with the sport and every aspect of the sport. And that's why they're able to push on the water.
And I mean, you mentioned of water, and so there's something that you guys speak about of indoor rowing. Would you like to just tell the audience what indoor rowing means and how it impacts also the water sessions that you guys have?
Yeah, so basically the rowing competition is divided into the water rowing and the indoor rowing. So the indoor rowing is focused mainly on rowing on erg machines, like the rowing machines in the gym. So there's a whole division of rowing that solely focuses on that and how fast you go on the rowing machine. When it comes to our selection processes, we take into account an athlete's performance on the rowing machine. So how our week looks is we start on a Monday on the water and we have a water session in Germiston. On a Tuesday, we're on the rowing machines at APK. And that session, I'm not sure if you've ever been on a rowing machine.
No,
our sessions, our sessions are anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and a half of
On
just
the rowing
consistent rowing on the rowing machine.
Jeez. It
Yeah.
must be tough.
I think it's probably one of the most difficult things that I have done, and that I have to do on a weekly basis. But your performance on that machine is what sets the standard for your fitness, and it also allows coaches to see if you're progressing. And as far as novices go, there are certain points that contribute towards the user standing that they can achieve depending on how fast they go on the rowing machine.
Okay.
So indoor rowing in itself is an entirely different world to normal water rowing. And what UJ has tried to do is recruit a lot of the guys from other provinces in indoor rowing.
To come here?
To come here to UJ. So we do have a lot of indoor rowers, and we're trying to teach them how to row on the water. And clearly it's worked.
Yeah.
Because you have guys who already have a background in pushing hard on a machine, and then you just teach them the skills to be on the water, and they just flourish.
So it actually works.
It
actually
does work.
Okay, that's actually amazing because I'm hearing you speak about all these things, the build up till this point, how you guys had experienced rowers last year, how you guys had have a lot of novices this year, and you guys have been doing well. But I just want to ask also, as president, right, building up to this moment or this tournament, did you feel any special vibe brewing? Because I understand that you guys were trying to create a sense of unity, right? You're trying to create some unity that you've never had before, so that you push and be better. Did you feel something special brewing? Because it's one thing to actually have a plan, but you have to execute the plan. And did you feel like, okay, it was coming to life? Did you feel anything special about it?
I think I was a lot more stressed going into this season. Last year I just went into social media and my job was to capture content. Whereas this year there were so many factors that needed to fall into place in order for us to race. And one of the main concerns I had was taking this group of new rowers to go and compete on the
That's
stage
very
against
stressful.
very experienced rowers. And all I kept asking was that everyone just did their best. But with the progress we were making, I would be lying to you if a few weeks ago I didn't think that, we're just not making enough progress. We're not ready. And the guys stepped up and they stayed consistent and they continued to show up. And that basically was all I asked for. So going into USA, there was already this culture of we may not be the best, but we're going to do our best. And I think that's something that the novices bought into. That's something that the coaches bought into. And there were a lot of nerves. I know for a fact the majority of the crew were nervous. Even though they were all acting like they were fine and they were excited,
Understandably so.
everyone was nervous because a lot of them had never done this before.
Yeah.
And then to throw a spanner in the works, we have these boats that we train in that we're used to. I mean, we're used to how the boat feels. And going down to Cape Town, our boats were in an accident. So we lost the majority of our fleet.
Really?
Yeah. So the day before we flew out, we had to have a team meeting and basically be like, okay, guys, we're still going. But you must understand when we get there, we're going to be rowing in boats that we've never rowed in before. And I know as novices, you already have all these new experiences happening that you've had to adapt to. This is another one you're going to have to adapt to. And an experienced rower will even tell you it's not ideal to be rowing in a boat you've never rowed in before, let alone race in it. And all I say to the club, and it's exactly what they did, is just we're going to go down there and adapt. Right? That's all we can do. So we did. We went down, and the rowing community really was all hands on deck. They donated boats that we could race in. Very nice boats.
Very, very nice words.
Very nice boats.
Wow.
And the novices were like, this is what I've been given, this is the situation. And the entire club did that. This is what we've been given, this is the situation. These were the setbacks. We can put our face in our hands and cry and be like, oh my goodness, this sucks. Or we can show up and just do our thing. And that's exactly what UJ did. They showed up, they hopped in the water, race in, race out. Half of them were tired all the time. But through the consistency and just showing up and racing their races, I believe that's why we got the result we got.
Well,
Amazing.
I mean, you've also been speaking about how the woman and the man have not been a unit. So how did that now this year changed? And as a senior, what kind of impact did you have in bringing all that unity between the man and the woman crews?
Yeah, okay, well, I think it's a lot less complicated than we... If I'm not going to overthink the entire thing,
Yeah.
everyone just became friends.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Is the relationship between the woman and the men became more than just you're my teammate, but you're my friend.
Yeah.
We had functions at my house where the rowers would come together away from the training and the high intensity, and it's just a braai or a games night where it's just us and we're just friends. And from what I've seen in my time in rowing, all the fastest crews are not just guys who constantly train together and who show up at their gym sessions together. It's guys who actually are friends.
Sure.
And it sounds very simple, and I think there's no profound explanation except for the fact that we all just became friends, and we all are friends.
Yeah.
And just through that simple act of, okay, Ntando, you're my friend, right? It means that I am willing to go the extra length if you're going the extra length, because that's what you do for your friend.
Sure.
So I think UJ rowing just became friends. And as from a senior's point of view, I had made many relationships within the club, and I have many friends within the club.
Sure.
But it always felt as though I'm friends with them, and I'm friends with them, and I'm friends with them, but they're not all friends with each other.
Sure.
So there were lots of different groups and cliques where that has lessened to a large extent this year. We're just one group, we're one clique.
So,
it's made a difference.
I mean, according to my understanding, this year UJ came out with big numbers, especially having POC, which is known as players of color. What does it mean to the club having that? Because, I mean, in the sporting space right now, POCs are like a big thing. And sometimes certain sports are labeled as like white dominant sports. Would you like to just take us through just a short brief as to how UJ managed to have that balance?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's no secret that rowing is seen as a white-dominated sport.
Yeah.
Some might even go as far as saying it's a white elitist sport,
Yeah.
because it's a very expensive sport. But one thing that UJ has over all the other varsities is we try and take care of our sportsmen. I mean, we're
Sure.
offered scholarships and bursaries
Yeah.
for the sport we play. So for Coach Sizwe to go to other provinces, to indoor rowers who haven't had the same opportunities as us, and uplift them and say, come to Joburg. You may not know how to row on water, but we can offer you this if you're willing to buy in, right? That has caused this influx of rowers of color.
Sure.
If you look at if you remember, you were there, the eights race, right, with 8 men in a boat, right, rowing down at sprints. UJ was one of the top competitors, and the majority of our boat were players of color,
Yeah.
or athletes of color, right? And I think for a lot of the other varsities who are trying to replicate that, so Wusu and Fort Hare, right, they're also predominantly black rowing clubs, but they don't necessarily go as fast as UJ goes, right? And it means a lot to them. It's this whole thing of, okay, right, it's always believed that the white people in the sport are going to be the best at this because they have their own boats and they've been doing it for a while and they did it in their private school. But when we raced this past weekend, it proved that that was not the case, right?
Yeah.
It proved that, okay, yes, they come from these backgrounds where they have money. Yes, they come from these backgrounds where it was a white-dominated sport. But now we're players of color and we're competing on the same stage. And guess what? We're good enough to compete. And that, I think, just inspires a lot of the players of color from varsities that may not be as big or as competitive as we are. So I think we're just breaking the narrative. We're breaking the narrative that you need to be a certain skin color to do well at the sport.
Sure.
And that's actually some exciting stuff. And I just want to ask, right, for me and for everyone who wasn't there, because you've said 3 times now that he was there. I just want to ask, what were some behind-the-scenes moments, like, during the tournament that stood out to you? You know, there's always those moments that, like, play a huge role, or they make it fun, or, like, they just play a role in your guys' like, success.
Yeah. Oh, there were so many moments. But I think one of the best moments for me was when I had my women's B4 hopping on the water to go and race their race. And by this point, the women's B4, B8, sorry.
What is the B8?
So it's basically, there's many different boat divisions, and some boats have 2 people, 4 people, 8 people. But at
so that's how
varsity
you
level-
label it, B8, B4.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, basically. So it's just different combinations and different race categories. It's the equivalent of being like the 100 meters, the 200 meters.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. But at varsity level, the big race that we're sort of defined by is the 8s race. Right? It's how well your varsity does with those 8 men or women you select to represent you.
Okay.
And the women's B8 hopped on, and it's comprised of novices and people who have just learned how to row. And up until that point, they'd all done numerous amounts of races, right? They had really pushed their bodies to the max. They were tired. I could see they were tired. And now you have to go and race the biggest race and the race that means something for the tournament. And I just said to them, you know what, ladies, just go out there and do your best. I know you're tired, and I told you that this was a difficult regatta. I am also tired, and I feel you, but just go out there and do your best. And they raced, and I don't know, Nsano can correct me. What place did they come?
Second place.
Yeah, they came second place.
Wow.
Right. And they competed against UCT and Stellenbosch and took B8, and they came second place. And when they got off the water, there was just this overwhelming sense of like, this is why I do it. You know, that it all makes sense. It wasn't for nothing. I might feel like I'm the only one pushing and constantly making sacrifices and waking up every morning to get these guys to training and chasing after people. But in reality, they do it too. They've been making sacrifices. And all I asked for them was to do their best. And when they did their best, the results showed. But it also showed me that the club is backing me the same way I'm backing them. So that for me was one of the most insane moments at USA. Yeah.
So how do you then balance your performance as a senior athlete, as well as still being able to do your duties as the president of the club?
Yeah, I think that's been one of my biggest challenges this year.
Yeah.
In the first few years of my rowing journey were completely Daniel focused. It was about how fast I was going on the water, about my job in a boat. And yes, I had the social media, but that was something that was a lot easier to balance with rowing and my portfolio. But being president, and I've seen it with the captains as well, there's a whole lot of responsibilities and a whole lot of things that happen that put you in a position where you may not be able to put your development as an athlete first.
Yes.
And I think for me, the easiest way to balance the two is, number one, I set my priorities. When it comes to rowing, I say, okay, well, I'm either going to be a Division 1 A crew rower, or I'm going to be a really good president.
Sure.
Because the reality is there's been many who've come before me, and I've seen it with other clubs. It's really hard to do both.
Yeah.
So I think the thing that's helped me and taken the pressure off me as an athlete is focusing on the fact that this year I said I was going to be president. And I've worked really hard at being a good president.
Yeah.
Has it come at the expense of some of my performances? Absolutely. I'd be lying if I said I was really good at just juggling it all and I'm doing really well. Have I seen other areas of my actual performance improving? Yes. Right. So I'm not stagnant as an athlete. But the reality is I've had to make certain sacrifices with my performance in order to help the club progress.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that's a choice that I made in the beginning.
Sure. And I mean, according to my understanding as well, the senior director, Nomsa, senior line manager Nompilo, and Coach Caesar being the rowing manager, they can't stress it enough that you're a student athlete first before you're an athlete. So how has that then impacted your performance as a student? Because according to my understanding, you wake up at like 5 a.m. in the morning for training, and you're on water, and you're the president of the club. It's a whole lot of responsibility. How does it affect you as an individual, also academically?
Yeah, it has been very time consuming. And we've had a lot of chats with the club about managing their time and using all the moments that they get to apply to their studying. I mean, you saw when we were at USA, we actually had athletes, and a lot of the varsities do it, but we had athletes who had brought their study materials with them. You know, so when we weren't training or we weren't competing, then they set time aside to study, to do their coursework. Because UJ rowing has had this stigma in the past few years where you're there to row and you're only there to row. And it has been much to the detriment of a lot of athletes. You know, there's nothing fun or cute about F7ing, you know.
Yeah.
Right? So we've really tried to create a culture this year where students understand that they're student athletes.
Sure.
Right? At the core of it, they're here to study.
Yeah.
Yes, we will support them in their rowing journey, but we're also going to support them in their academic journey.
Wow.
So for me personally, it's just been about managing my time. And once again, you make your priorities, you set your list, and you stick to those priorities. And I speak to my captains a lot, because my captains are under a lot of strain. They're studying extremely demanding courses. And the women's captain, she's studying chiropractic medicine. And she's had a really difficult time trying to balance everything as well.
Yeah.
But I also just said to her, you set your priorities, and you stick to that. Right? And I've seen how just by that small concept alone, it allows you to better manage everything. because then when things do fall through the cracks, or you aren't able to do this where you used to be able to do that, you say to yourself, okay, well, I had already set my priorities, so technically everything's going according to plan, and that's okay.
Jeez. And I mean, like, two things. There's blues and grudges in the use of sprints, right? And obviously the audience do not know about blues and grudges. So will you just take us through blues and grudges, short brief, as well as how your novice have been doing? I mean, the letter came out the other day, and we're seeing that the University of Johannesburg has literally 2 of their athletes in the top 5. I mean, top 5 in the country for novices.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel as a president? And yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to the novice ladder, I'll start with the novice ladder. We have our novices compete in an erg competition, I think about 3 times within the year. So basically, they hop on the rowing machine and they row 500 meters as fast as possible. And those times get submitted to the official University Sport South Africa. And they rank us according to that performance. And we had, as Ntando said, 2 novices placing in the top 5. He was one of them. And it counts points towards our overall standing, I think, as I said earlier. But also, it's a testament to the programs we have here. It's a testament to the novice programs that Coach Sizwe and the rest of our coaches have in place. Because you have new time rowers who hop on the erg, and they compete with all the other new time rowers, but we're that one step better. And for me, as a president who came from being a novice just 2 years ago, it's comforting to know that the program still works, that the program is in full effect. And the program's probably also getting better and improving with time.
Yeah.
Because that means the sport will grow, and the sport will continue. But furthermore, it means that UJ rowing will grow and will continue. So yeah, I take comfort in knowing that it's sustainable, and the growth that we are focusing on is sustainable and will last for years to come.
Yeah.
With Blues and Grudge, so at the end of the tournament, the USA officials, they select 16 athletes, right? 16 athletes that they've observed over the course of the tournament, and it's 16 boys and 16 girls. And they place them they divide them between 2 boats, and they have them race against each other.
Okay.
And it doesn't really count points. I mean, you get bragging rights, but basically it's the best of the best in South Africa racing against each other. Last year we had quite a few athletes. I think we had 6 athletes who qualified for Blues and Grudge. And this year we had our women's captain qualify for Blues and Grudge. But it is, once again, just a platform where we get to showcase our talents. And just to let people know that, hey, like, we're part of the best. You know, so to have athletes qualifying for that it's like a feather in our cap, you know. So yeah.
Okay. It seems like the club is doing quite well, and also this comes back to being a point in time in your evolution, from coming from being a novice, right, learning how to row, rowing for you, then coming and being president. Like, you are at a point where your work is actually efficient. Whatever you're doing it well, and you can see the results. And I just want to ask, what leadership values are you actually learning from this whole experience that you think you'll actually apply in future?
Well, I think one of the main things I've learned from doing this is patience. Patience in the sense that understanding that people's development happens at different speeds and rates. For one athlete to be doing their best and for another athlete to be doing their best looks very different.
Sure.
And expecting everyone to be on the same platform is just unrealistic. And I think that's something that will sort of set me in good stead going forward in the future, you know, is that patience. But also, I've learned, not from myself, but from the rest of the committee and the work that they do, it's just to be selfless.
Wow.
The committee has really put the club first. I'm only able to do my job because there are 7 other people who are there day in, day out, doing their part, making my job easier. And the amount of times I've seen each and every one of them put the rowers and the club before themselves is insane, and it's absolutely admirable. So I've just tried to replicate that selflessness and be like, Daniel, you know, it's not about you. You know, it's about the team, it's about the culture we're trying to create. And I think the best thing for the committee, and myself included, was seeing that our efforts have not been in vain.
Sure.
And when we got our results at sprints, we were able to realize that all the work and the selflessness and the patience has paid off. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for a team that understands that. And I'm thankful for a committee that was able to teach me that.
Okay, that's nice.
Well, now the big question. What are your biggest hopes for the club for the next 2 years?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's quite big that UJ came out second place this year. We're not far off, but very far off from beating Tux. But, I mean, Tux has literally like 10,000 national athletes. However, we're not too far off. And in some of the guys' races, the boys beat Tux. So what are your hopes for the next 2 years for the club, you know, beyond just coming second place in this year's uses?
Yeah, I think within the rowing world and most sports, Tux is always seen as the big dogs.
Sure.
And it's because they really are just really good at sports.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about this past sprint is that Stellenbosch was actually the crew that won the 8th race, right? So they
Yeah.
became the new boys in town. So racing in that 8th race was probably one of the most insane experiences. But it showed me that this year it's anyone's game. The usual formats and placing that we're all used to, I mean, it's always going to be Tux, UCT, UJ, Stellenbosch, or UJ and Stellenbosch constantly interchange between third and fourth. But we've become used to that being the set placing, where this past sprints, it just showed that it's absolutely anyone's game. And it's exciting, but it's also daunting.
Yeah.
But my hope is that all the athletes that race this past user gain confidence in the sense that they're fast enough to be there. UJ, the men's 8, they're fast enough to compete with Tux and
Yeah.
with UCT and Stellenbosch. And for all of the novice divisions who won, I mean, we had a lot of novices who won medals, right? Is that they're fast enough to be there and compete. And I'm hoping that leading up to our next big tournaments in September, right, that they carry that momentum of I'm fast enough, I'm good enough. Because that's what you need in rowing. As much as you might be fit, you need to believe that you're able to go fast. Because if you have no confidence in your abilities, then you come off second best. So I'm hoping that the club sort of transforms from this club of being like, okay, we're novices,
Sure.
to just understanding that they're just rowers. They're
Wow.
rowers who are really talented.
Yeah.
And that whole title of novices is just a title.
Yeah.
They have what it takes. If they put in the work, they have what it takes to compete. And I'm hoping to see that in this upcoming September tournament.
I mean, as well as, I mean, Tux is known as a high performance institute when coming to sports. But, I mean, UJ has also shown that we have something special, I mean, coming out second place, it's quite huge. And no one can just rock up a juicer and just come out second place. But it shows the talent that UJ has. I mean, according to my understanding at rowing, you also have some rugby players, cricketers here and here. And it just shows that we're a multi-talented university. And we're not just, you do this sports and that's all you do. But we do what we can to keep the name of the university and not just competing stages, but maintain, a good decorum and being the best of the best.
Yeah, and I think like that word that you said, they maintain, is my hope for next year and going forward, right?
Sure.
I want the fact that UJ comes second place and competes with the big dogs to not be a surprise. Because a lot of people were surprised, and the athletes included, myself included, were like, oh my goodness, this is crazy, right? But I want that to just become the norm. I want us to be competitive and the club to be sustainably competitive, where we know when we rock up at these big regattas that the other varsities see us coming, that they see UJ as one of the big competitors.
Sure.
And with those who come before me, I've seen it. UJ in the past has been extremely, extremely talented, extremely fast in the water. A few years back, our men won sprints. So it's possible. And even though the standard and the quality of rowers within UJ might have shifted, because back then there were a lot of experienced guys who trained really hard, and their work paid off. And now we have a lot of inexperienced guys who are training just as hard. And it would be nice to know that no matter if you're experienced or inexperienced, if you put in the work and you show up, right, then those results will stay constant. So yeah, I think that's my biggest thing, is I hope that UJ can just maintain what it started this year. And it's really carried on from last year. I mean, last year the women came second place, and it was an extremely talented crew last year. And this year, the crew has changed a lot, and still they managed to maintain their second place. So if that can just be the UJ culture across the board, then I'm happy.
All right. To wrap the show up, I reckon you'd still get involved at having to, even if, I mean, I know it's your last year this year, so I know you'll be finishing off. Are you still going to get involved in the club?
Yeah.
Or...
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have alumni, and I will then become one of the many alumni that have come before me.
Yeah.
And still hopefully be engaged and actively engaged in UJ rowing.
Oh, all right. And that's it for this week's episode, UJ Sport episode. And yeah, we brought in the best of the best presidents here at UJ, and it's been lovely. Please stay tuned in, make sure that you subscribe, and see you soon. Thank you.